My name's Anita Brown, and I'm the lead life coach at the Lafayette Excel Center in Lafayette, Indiana. I have been with the Excel Center since 2013. I started as a life coach, and then one term I was the CCR, and then I became the lead life coach. So, and I went to Indiana State University, go Sycamores, whoop, whoop. I have my bachelor's and my master's degree from there. So my master's degree is in school counseling. So I do what I love and I enjoy every day. So, Miss Katie.
All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our session today. I'm Katie. I started with the Excel Center back in 2017 as a life coach and have played a couple different roles with Goodwill, and now I'm the lead coach at Decatur. I am interim CCR at this time, and so the next month can't go fast enough until ours gets in the building. It is a whole different ball game, but I love what I do. I come to school every single day to get to do this work, and what we are presenting today on with the building positive relationships is why Anita and I do what we do every single day. My background is in adult education, so I knew that the Excel Center was the right fit for me.
So we are going to go ahead and start our presentation. So Miss Amanda, if you would show our slides, we greatly appreciate it. So our title is Building and Maintaining Positive Relationships. So next slide, please.
So we want to get you guys understanding what it is that we are looking to share with you today. And by the end of today, we want you to understand the different methods of building and managing relationships with both your staff and your students. We want you guys to consider reframing how you connect with your staff and students, especially now as some of us are looking at transitioning back into an in-person or still a hybrid model. And then also identifying new tools that you can place in your tool belt so that you can work with your staff and students combined.
Okay, next slide. I want you to grab a scrap piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, I want you to think back to your college, your high school, whatever school experience. Has someone said hurtful words that helped or hurt you become the person you are now? You can write down who that person was, what they said to you. So for example, what I think about is when I was a sophomore in high school, I ended up being the only girl in a class taught by a male teacher, and I was asking tons of questions. The male teacher and the male students in the class made fun of me, so I quit asking questions and I flunked that class.
The one that stands out to me the most is I was on the team softball in middle school, and I had played softball my entire life. Pretty good at it too. But I remember the one time I was running the bases and my coach told me I was too fat, that I would never be able to go anywhere with my athleticism. And that was the last year I ever played softball. So I think it ties into Anita's favorite quote here, and I'll let her share that with you.
Yeah, but while you're thinking about that person and what was said, my other question is it hard to break that cycle of hurtful words? You know, sometimes as an adult, we tend to go back, and the students that we see and some of our staff members also, we have been hurt in our past. And I believe some of us been through some of the different presentations today with our ACEs. One of the things is, you know, we go back to, some of us are older that remember, you know, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think that is the wrong thing to say. So my favorite quote here is, the tongue has no bones, but is strong enough to break a heart. So be careful with your words. So I think sometimes we forget what we're saying and how we're saying it. So be thoughtful of those words and what you're saying, because that's how we develop this positive relationship with others. You can go to the next slide. Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Remember that our students come in, and we often have students who have been told things over and over and over again. Just recently, I have a student who has been rather challenging in the building, and she's constantly like, I'm too dumb for this. I can't do it. I just need to retake this class over and over again. The first day she sat in her class, she was the only one that got 100% on her math quiz. And then we gave her a laptop because her child was sick and she wasn't able to come into school. And she was like, well, I need you guys to train me on this. I've never opened a computer before in my life. And it took less than 30 seconds to get her acclimated to the computer, because she's just been told over and over that she's never going to get it. So that's truly what she believes. And she sets it up so that we have all this time to give her, and she doesn't need it. So we're constantly working with rebuilding our students after they've been broken down with words. All right, next slide.
So one of the things that we find with our students and staff is you have to find some kind of common ground to establish that relationship with our students. And it's your choice how much you want to share, and it's your story, but our students really need to see that we're human too, and that we maybe have gone through some similar things that they have gone through. So Miss Katie and I had to find some similar things. We both have dogs. So we both love Disney, and her school is at a different time. Her school's like 12:30 to 8. My school is 8:30 to 4:30. So trying to find the common ground for us to get together to work on our presentation. So as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, that's my dog right here, Twister. And then that's Scooter that you see, Twister and Scooter in the back. We also, but sometimes when you can find that common ground, whether it's football, it's music, it's telephone, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, you'll get your student to open up to you more and they'll talk to you more about different things. Sorry.
I think, yeah, common ground is something that we just left a session actually about culture in the building. And we think about trying to find common ground with our students often. But there are some cases where we have to figure out how are we going to make this common ground work for our staff members as well. Just because you're on a team with someone, just because you are related to them, whatever the situation might be, does not mean that you always see eye to eye. So working with them and building a relationship, a foundational relationship, is about finding that common ground.
Agree.
Next slide.
Sorry, I was reading the G-chat to make sure there wasn't any questions. So the next slide, what I like to say is our students really have keyboard courage. And it's like they can say whatever they want. You can read the definition there of keyboard courage there at the top. You can say anything behind Facebook, by Instagram, by Twitter. We've seen that in today's society from our professionals all around the world. But would you really say that to that person if you were face to face? It's easier, and you can't interpret what they say via email or Facebook or Twitter as you can if I'm talking to you face to face, because I can read body language, I can read your tone, your emotions, and different things. So our students, because they have gone through all this crud before, they tend to have the keyboard courage, and they tend to take it out on us. And so sometimes, and then when our defense mechanisms go up. So realizing, wait a minute, this isn't really about me. They just have keyboard courage is what I'm encouraging you to all try to do. Kind of like that stop and think before you react.
I think one thing that ties in with keyboard courage can be some of the most influential, but also the most hurtful things that can be said. But that's also just like when we find that courage to find the one person at work we want to talk to. I always encourage people to find the person outside of work as your thought partner. But if you have a thought partner in your workspace, use them as a thought partner and not a bent person. It's really important with keyboard courage or thought partners that we handle things head on when we have conflict with others. We need to really make sure that we're addressing and processing, but we don't process for too long. That time goes on and it's worthless to bring up, but also that we're not sitting on it and letting it simmer so that we eventually explode, or we're just passing that unnecessary hurtful tone to other people in the office who may or may not feel the same way as you, but it's just not the appropriate place to share it.
And that's the other thing is also we talk about too, is we teach our students who holds you accountable on your social media, who would approve that. And so I explained to them, on my Facebook page, I have my mother-in-law, I have my stepson, I have my sister. And when my dad was alive, I have my father, I have my director on there, because I asked myself, if I post this, would these people be proud of me and approve of what I'm posting. And if the answer is no, then I don't need to post it. And that has stopped me so many times of a posting. And then the other thing with Keyboard Courage is we don't know what our students are going through. And so that's why sometimes they tend to be able to really be kind of sarcastic or really mean to us through social media.
Absolutely. Next slide. All right. So a big part of the success that each of us have had, I'm sure, is about emotional intelligence. And according to the Oxford Languages, it's the capacity to be aware of and control and express one's emotions, and being able to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and also empathetically. So when we think of that, we also have to think of what's empathy. And we have to recognize that empathy does not mean that you sympathize or validate someone or that you accept their behavior, but that you can see things from their perspective. We give so much empathy to our students every single day that we often feel burnt out. And by term 5, I think that some of us might feel that it's on repeat. We've had a pretty rough year, especially in the midst of a pandemic. So we have to remember that we can't neglect the core services that we offer at the Excel Center. Both students and staff need that empathy more as we're winding down into this transition after the pandemic. Everyone's gotten into a groove of things. People have lost friends and family. There's been so many events that have taken our loved ones or made us change what we're doing and how we're reflecting this year alone. That empathy piece is really, I think, part of what helps our success as a whole for the network. So remember that as we're winding down term 5, that just check yourself, check where your empathy is, check how frustrated you get, how quickly, and what can you do to recenter and regain what your students and your staff members need.
Because students and staff will feel it if you're not giving your all. They can feel the burnout. They can feel like, wait a minute, Miss Katie's not there for me like she normally is. What's going on? So also in some of the sessions I've been through today, I think one of the most important things is take care of your mental health and take care of you. And it's okay, especially what we've been through.
So let's continue on with the next slide for emotional intelligence. So we want to look at why is it important and what do we do with it? Because having a high emotional intelligence allows us to rationalize the emotions we have. As human beings, we're hardwired to actually perceive our emotions before we can think about what we're going to do to respond. So before we get to our rational thought, the information passes through the place among us that emotions are experienced first. So emotional intelligence allows us to effectively communicate our emotions without giving that first response. So we need to train ourselves to process the emotions before reacting. That's really hard as we've been doing our reaction and thought process our entire lives. So trying to retrain yourself so that you can build on your emotional intelligence is absolutely possible. There are so many different studies that have been done that allow us to know what emotional intelligence is, and it's not like IQ. IQ, you typically can't change your IQ, but you can absolutely change your EQ or your emotional intelligence. Emotions can be helpful and they can be hurtful. So we have to know how to properly express and understand them. If you're interested in learning more about emotional intelligence, I highly recommend Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It will allow you to really dive into and take different tests so that you can check yourself on your emotional intelligence multiple times. It's not a one-time test. But they did a study out of 500,000 people. They reviewed only 36% of people tested where they were accurately able to identify the emotions that they had at the time they were experiencing them. The greater your emotional intelligence, typically the more intense your reaction is going to be. Without emotional intelligence, negative emotions are going to lead those reactions that you have. So if you have someone in your building, whether it be staff or student, who reacts first, this is a really key piece at being able to build them up on that emotional intelligence so that they can learn to process those without jumping on those reactions. It's the thought that follows, which gives us the power to control those emotions. Anything, Anita?
I was just gonna say, sometimes it's okay too, like when you're dealing with this, if there's a situation, maybe have that thought partner or someone you can go to, because we don't, as a coach, sometimes we tend to want to solve it right away for our students. And it's okay to say, you know what, I need to think about this. I need to take a little bit of a break. Let me think about this and come back to it. It might be where, for example, I might have a student who is thinking drugs are okay and meth is okay. And that might be where, I need to say, okay, put my happy face on, but then maybe call Katie and say, Katie, I'm really having a hard time with this because, it's bringing out my own stuff that I've been through when my husband got hit by a guy who was high on meth and different things. So give yourself breaks and know it's okay to give yourself those breaks.
Grace is the single most and most difficult thing to give ourselves, but it's so important. Emotional intelligence, according to Travis Bradbury and Jean Graves, is the single biggest predictor of performance in the workplace and the strongest driver of leadership and personal excellence, which I think is really ironic because the Excel Center as a whole and Goodwill as a whole truly builds from within. We're constantly moving our employees across and up. And I think it's because of that focus on emotional intelligence and building on what we already have. And next slide.
Yeah.
So we wanted to give you guys some opportunity to track how you're feeling, track and identify what you do and how you are processing. It's not always easy, but these are just some simple strategies that we can use. Really emotional, intelligent people notice how they're feeling and then react appropriately. They regulate their emotions. They watch their behavior to ensure that they're not unnecessarily offending someone. It's easy to offend, but they don't do it intentionally. And so I think, Anita, you had an example here.
And I just went blank, to be honest. So something that may offend me may not offend somebody else, and knowing that. So, you're talking about with my student the other day. So I have a student that the word calm down just makes them go irate. We had a situation where the student was angered. One of the staff members forgot that was a trigger word. And I realized something that I should have done differently was I should have said, let me have the student for 10 minutes, let them vent in my office, and then we'll come back and deal with the issue at hand. And I think we could have had a different turn, a different situation than what we had. It didn't get really bad, but it's just something that, and I explained to my student, we're humans and we were dealing with another situation. So our mind was on that, not this situation. And we can't remember everything at all. And so it's also giving those students, hey, give me a clue word to remind me if I forget something. So, some of us have 50 to 70 to 80 on our caseload, and it's hard to remember what each student needs or what a staff member needs, different things.
Absolutely. And it's funny because if Anita were to tell me to calm down, I would be like, oh, okay, rational thought. If my husband were to tell me to calm down, oh, it's game on, bro. So I think it's also about where the message is coming from and knowing that oftentimes when people are, that's true, she does have a gift. I think it's really important to remember that when people come at us with that feedback, it's not meant to be hurtful, but maybe they're not sure how to process or how to start that conversation. So when you do any of these exercises, you don't have to act on them. You don't have to decide if your reaction was right or wrong. Just focus on observing them, write them down, be honest with yourself because nobody else is going to look at this. It's truly about what am I doing? How am I reacting? And what can I do to be better at it?
And your tone, our students, they're amazing. So, they can tell when we're being sarcastic, they can tell when we're having fun. So, a tone I might use with Angie, I think Angie and Melissa are on here from Lafayette, might not be a tone that I would use with Katie or Bethany. So it's the difference, making sure you know your audience also.
I like that. Know your
Okay,
audience.
next slide, please. I'm going to try to get through this one without crying. This one is hard for me because this is about the same. This time last year, my father was getting sick, and on May 9th, he will pass away. He passed away, so it'll be a year. So I want you to think about who your first champion was. Who was your first champion? How did they help you, and how did they believe in yourself? So on that scrap piece of paper, write that. As you will see on the left, this is a heart that's in my office that Miss Josie did for me of my father. When I was a junior in high school, my mom decided to move away and follow a guy to Florida, and my dad took me in. My dad worked at swing shifts, and my dad said, and I made the flag corps that year, and I was in choir. So my dad would work 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7. So we had worked it out, like I would put the chain backwards, so when he worked 11 to 7, he could get his hand in there, but I would be safe and different things. But I remember dad working 3 to 11 and looking up in the audience, and there he was to watch me at halftime twirling my flag at football. And so a couple of years later, I said, Dad, how did you do that? And he says, I took my lunch then. My dad told me, you can do anything you wanted to put your mind to. He also gave me that tough love too. He threw me in the factory when I was in high school and college, and I said, nope, not going to do that. But I also want you to think too, there's going to be different champions throughout your life. And who are those champions? And how are you? So what qualities, we'll ask for a few people to share here in a second. What qualities did your champion have? Do you still think of that person today? And what kind of champion do you want to be to your students, to your staff? And what are you going to do to ensure that you are that champion? So, and when I say different champions, for example, another champion in my life is my old babysitter, Mrs. Osborne. When my mother passed 7 years ago, Mrs. Osborne was there. I don't see her every day. I don't talk to her every day. We send the Christmas cards. When my dad passed, that woman was there. My best friend from high school, we don't always see each other, but she texts me. Her mom and her were there for everything. So who are those champions? And so even though I'm a daddy's girl and I miss my daddy like crazy, and I can hear him tell me, pull up your bootstraps and be strong like I taught you. You can do this. Be there for your students. He's still there. I feel like he's watching over me. And when I'm having that bad day at work, I can look up at this heart in my office and I see, okay, dad's here. Dad's telling me, that student that just cussed you out, let it fly. You'll get through it, but you're the first person that's been there for them. So when I say what kind of champion you're going to be, I have a tough cookie on my caseload right now. That tough cookie hasn't had a great positive woman in her life. And she lives with grandpa. And yesterday was the birthday. So and grandpa's been in the hospital. And she texted me and said, Miss Nita, can I just come see you for a second at school and get a hug? I was like, well, yeah, sure. I don't care. And just because I think I've sat and listened to her and she knows I'm there. And even though she's been nasty to me at times, I've still been there and tried to be that champion for her. So anybody else want to share who their champion was or what characteristics that their champion had?
I'll share one.
Thank you.
When I first started at the Excel Center, I already had a very limited support system. And when I came, my son, I think, was 3 years old. And on the first day that I brought homework home, he attempted to make me tea. He put a tea bag and poured sugar in there. And he said, here, Mom, for your homework. And that was so inspiring. I didn't know if I was going to stick to it. I didn't know if I was going to finish, but next month I'll be graduating with my degree. And I think about my son and how he's impacted me. He inspires me more than he knows. And yeah, he is still my my champion.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Someone said their dad. Yeah. Yeah. And some of you that know my mother-in-law, she was my other champion. I don't know. She's been the mom that I've never really had and is there for me. And I think some people want to steal her from me. You know, some of my friends, they love her, but it's great to have that. That is so good. And Gloria, I know someone else who's a champion for you is Mr. James. He talks about you and your progress all the time to me. And it's just so cool that he was able to share your backstory with me.
I have one.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure.
Mine would be my grandfather. He was basically, my father was in the military a lot of my early childhood, so he was dad for the longest time. And he's not even my real biological grandfather. I didn't even realize that until I was like 18. But you know, I was his for all intents and purposes. And he was a pastor. He passed 2 years ago. He was a pastor, and it used to just like blow my mind. It's like, how do you make time for all of these people? Like, people would come to him, come to the house, want to meet with him, counseling sessions. It's like, how do you make time for all of these people? You've got 6 grown kids that you find time for, 13 grandkids that you always find time for. And I used to just like get mad almost at people for relying on him. And I asked him one time, I was like, you know, why do you do it? You know, you've been sick and and why do you do it? And he just told me, he was like, you know, kid, you have to know that whatever you pour out of yourself for other people, you just have to know that God will replenish that. Whatever you do for people, God will make sure that he replenishes that with you. And I'm not lacking anything because I'm there for somebody else, because I've got all of this love around me. I've got all these people around me, and you'll never be lacking anything if you're doing for other people. So I think I take that with me all the time. And whether it's with my child, whether it's, you know, at work and students want to talk and things like that. And I'm not I don't have the teacher role, you know, I don't have the coach role. I'm just the office manager, but still, you know, I'm the first person they see when they walk in the door. So if I see somebody with that look on their face, it's like, hey, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you get 20 minutes worth of a story. And, you know, I can be receptive to that. And I think that helps me with friends, with family, with, you know, my job. It helps me. And I can thank him for that and take that with me.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody want to share what they're going to do to be a champion? And as you can see, Miss Katie and I have some quotes on there. And I was not going to put the heart of my dad on there, but Miss Katie told me I had to. So you can thank Miss Katie for that one. So
It's just so inspiring. I love it. I think, and I just made a comment in the chat too. I have so many champions that I don't even think they've realized they're champions for me. The one that comes to mind with my growth through the Excel Center is actually my second director that I ever had. Nigel, at the time, he pushed me and he made me want to become more at the Excel Center. And that's, I mean, I never, when I started in 2017, would have ever seen myself doing presentations, not only at the GEM conference level with Central and Southern Indiana, but a national level. I never would have seen that. And he believed in me and he pushed me and he wanted me more for me than I even realized I wanted for myself. And it's because of, you know, individuals like them who champion without, you know, saying like, I'm going to mentor you, or I'm going to be there for you, or I'm going to champion for you. It's just really inspiring that there's so many of them, especially in our very small network here. Love you, Tay.
yeah.
All right, next
Okay.
slide is, okay, so this is has become one of my favorite things to do with staff, with any individual that I'm working closely with. And if you could sit here and guarantee that the people you work with, the people that you interact with would feel special and appreciated just by the right communication, would you do it? One of my new favorite books has become the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. It's by Gary Chapman and Dr. Paul White. And each of us have the ability to do just that, to figure out what people need so that we can communicate so they feel heard. If you've ever done the 5 love languages, it's incredible. My husband and I have an entirely new relationship because we're on 2 different spectrums of love languages. It's similar to that. It's the same 5 languages, but this is how do you feel appreciated? Ironically, my love language and my language of appreciation are very different. My language of appreciation matches my husband's love language, but my love language does not. So here are a list of the languages. I won't read them to you. You may or may not have heard of them, but I encourage you to take the quiz that they have, and I'm going to post it in the chat. By going there, it's a PDF of the quiz. You can print it off. We meant to have it sent out to you guys beforehand, and then we weren't sure how to get it out to you guys. We decided we're just going to put it in the chat so that you guys have access to it, and you can do this with your students, with your staff members, with your teachers, with your coaches, whomever, so that you can appreciate people in the right way. Next slide. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Sarah. So here's the book specifically. And then I've also included just a brief cutout of like what and how you can appreciate. So words of affirmation, it's really difficult because you also have to find out, do you like a good job in front of people or do you like a good job behind the scenes, one-on-one? But another thing that it really strikes me is words of affirmation and compliments are 2 very different things. Appreciation and compliments are external validation. So great job. That may or may not make you feel good. Great job. I'm super proud of you, Anita, for being vulnerable during our presentation today. You inspire me every single day with your words, with who you are and who you show up to be. That is an affirmation. And
She knows my love language.
and I pray every single day that you hear that and it's authentic when we tell you, because I know there have been a lot of I love you Anitas and you rock Anita in the chat, and you have to feel it because it is true and it is who you are at your core. But that if I said good job Anita on your presentation, she may or may not think one way or another, because a lot of people say good job, but what does that mean? So make sure that you're not just giving an external validation, that you're building deep into someone's core, because it's that core need that people with words of affirmation are seeking. We've got acts of service. This is a tough one. This is my love language. It is not my language of appreciation. But being able to show our students and our coworkers, our supervisors, they're just small gestures, how valued they are to us. Maybe it looks like helping with a difficult project. Maybe it's assisting with technology issues. I have a, let's just call it a control freak need. I'm terrible at giving up. If I'm working on a project, I'm super stressed. My director comes to me every single day. What can I do for you? What do you need me to take off of your plate? Nothing, I'm fine, because I can't give up that control. Her language of appreciation is acts of service. And so she's constantly asking. We did the quiz in our building. 0 people in our building, aside from her, want acts of service. It is the lowest one for every single individual. So what we found is she's constantly asking, but she's not meeting our needs because that's not what any of us are seeking, but that's her way of sharing and giving. So it opened up a lot of our eyes in that field. There's receiving gifts. It doesn't always have to be of monetary value. We work for Goodwill. We're not big over here. So just making sure you put in true care and thought into, validating them through a gift of some sort. Many times physical touch has been so hard right now in the midst of a pandemic. I'm so happy to hear that other people can still give hugs to their students, because since we've been completely virtual for the most part, that is the one thing that I miss and I need the most. But you also have to know personal boundaries. So maybe when their physical touch is their thing, they just want an elbow or a fist. For me, it's that hug. Hugs release so much stress from me that
Mhm.
I didn't even realize I needed it until I worked in a job that I was so passionate about that I carried all the stress on my shoulders. But one thing that's most important to remember about this is that people often communicate with others the way they prefer to communicate. So in the situation of my director, she was asking, what can I do for you? How can I take this off your plate? What can I do to relieve the stress? And none of us had any answers for her. She was getting frustrated because she was like, I'm trying. And everybody else was like, you're annoying me. So it's important to make sure that we remember that we have to adapt to other people's needs. Doing this as a staff has really opened our eyes to what each of us need individually and as a whole.
And one thing I want to add is this has to be authentic, because I am a person of words of affirmation and I can take constructive criticism, but if you just criticize me, I'm going to shut down on you and not say anything to you. Quality time, I like that too, but when I want quality time, I want you to make eye contact with me. I want you to be present with me. I don't want you to be on your cell phone. Or, you know, my husband, for example, he'll spend time with me, but he's over there watching YouTube and I'm like, why are we even hanging out and different things? Now me, I love to give gifts because I love to see, I get a high off of seeing people's reactions of the gifts. But you know, I can tell you my love language is praise and touch and feel. So this pandemic has been hard for me because I am a huggy person, and you know, not being able to give the hugs like we've done and different things. So I saw one of my good friends from high school yesterday at Walmart, and we both saw each other with our mask on and we were like all excited, and I was ready to go hug her and she's like, fist bump. I'm like, oh yeah, fist bump. So you know, in the past I would have been able to hug her, but please just make sure that it's authentic and know that these are great, but also know it's the way you use them, because you could set that person off the wrong way.
I always felt so guilty when we did the languages of appreciation in the workplace because of how high receiving gifts was on mine, and nobody else in my building had it as high. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so selfish. But I'm like you, Anita, I get a high from seeing other people receive. I love stopping and getting Starbucks for people, bringing in donuts or bagels. And maybe I just want a bagel or coffee in the morning, and so I selfishly do it. I don't know. But I love bringing it to other people. And it gives me such a high to see that it's just that small, like smile that maybe they needed that in the morning, or I don't know what they went through. Maybe their dog made a disaster mess in the house and it was a stressful morning. And so just that little piece of, I can bring calm to some storm. I love the receiving gifts, but I always feel uncomfortable when I receive them from others. Next slide.
The next slide. Okay, so we get to do the fun part again. So if you're artistic, draw balloons. If you're not, just draw circles. That would be me, because all I can draw is stick figures. So in each circle or balloon, I want you to write down things that you do to relieve your stress. What are they? We'll give you a few minutes to do that.
After you get them written in your balloons or your circles, you're welcome to share those in the chat if you feel comfortable as well.
Yes. For example, one of the things I like to do is I like to read. And just recently I've started working out and realized, one, that I'm worth the time to work out, and two, I actually like it. And it does help me. I like to crochet. I sometimes like to play Candy Crush just to wind down from a crazy day, but still keep my mind busy. What are those things that you do? So talk to your friend. Me too. Listen to audiobooks, talk, TikTok. Someone's gonna have to teach me how to do TikTok because I don't have it.
I've never posted it, but I can scroll for hours and then I get that message that says, hey, you've been scrolling for a really long time. Maybe you should take a break. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing.
Watch reality. I like to watch reality. I'm a big music fan, so I Love to watch American Idol, and I love to watch The Voice. Plus, I'm a big Blake Shelton fan. He's my boyfriend. I share him with our MOA, Miss Angie, and my husband knows, and he's okay with it because his friend's Reba, so we're cool. So the reason why anybody sharing what you guys are saying, you talk, go to the gym, watch TV, the Golden Girls, meditate, great. These are all bubble bath, wonderful. The reason I asked you to write these down is I want to leave you with a question. Do you ever explore or teach your students what they need to do to relieve stress? We are so busy, I feel like, in the coaching world, teaching them how to communicate healthy, how to use anger management skills, how to deal with their anxiety and different things but we never teach them or think about one of the most important activities is how to de-stress. And that's just as important as all these other skills that we're teaching them to do, that we also need to teach them, hey, let's identify what you do to de-stress. What is that? For example, I've had a picture of my dogs in my office where a student, I said, just pretend like he's here with us and pet him. And that helped calm him down. Or they had a favorite artist and I'm like, who is your artist? We printed a picture off and they kept it in their notebook. Or I kept a picture, or I said, come to my office and we'll play one of their songs. I don't care if it's horrible or whatever. If that's what calms you down, we'll listen to it.
We just recently took a wall in our front office at Decatur, and it's so that like it's just the privacy of the staff, and it says Decatur Fur Babies, and it's all pictures of all of our animals from home. We've got rabbits and cats and dogs and any animal you can think of, but it's such a fun place when you need that breather to just go and look at people's puppies and their kitties. And yes, I will make sure. I actually, right here, I'll walk.
Yeah. Scooty, come here. So I love hearing this and love seeing this. So we just wanted you to remind this is a great activity for you not to forget. Miss Katie just showed the animal wall and I was trying to get my doggie to come so I could show you one of them.
I had to come into the office today because the gym conference was embarrassing enough presenting with my cat and my dog.
He's not very happy with me because I woke him up from a nap. Say hi to the staff. Say hi, everybody. So this is my cuddle bug Scooter.
Good boy.
Yeah. All right, next slide. Miss Katie and I are hoping that we gave you some different tools for your toolbox. It's always changing. Some tools you're always going to keep, some tools you might get rid of, some tools you might bring back. But with our presentation, we're hoping to give you some new coaching tools, some different tools that'll help you, that shows that you're competent, that you're a better communicator, changing our attitude. It's okay to recognize, hey, we might need to take a break from this. Go back to bed. Miss Katie, you got anything you want to add?
Just was going to see, is there any, I know when I shared, yeah, we'd be happy to share our slides with you guys. I was just hoping if anybody has any tools that they picked up today that they are really excited about taking back, if you could just throw that in the chat. Maybe you picked up something that somebody else missed, and so we can, share it out with each other. And I will, at the end of this, make sure that I share the link to the languages of appreciation again. And I'll also put it in the slides so that when we share the slides, it will be there. All right, and then we'll just hit on the last slide.
I really found this quote, and it really hit home with me. Is self-care is how you take your power back, because I feel like that's something that we're always teaching our students, that they have the power. And even us as staff members, is we need to take our power back. I'm one of those that's always taking care of everyone else, and I finally am starting to take care of myself this year, and I'm okay with it. It's like the things I've attended today is like, yep, you're doing the right thing, Anita. So just remember that. And then nothing can bring you peace but yourself was the other quote that Miss Katie and I found, because I think a lot of times in our world and in our students' world, we're always looking well, what's going to bring me peace? What can help me with this? And then realizing I'm the person that brings peace to me.
I am reading, if you haven't before, Girl Wash Your Face, and love it. If anybody wants book recommendations, apparently I'm just going to feed them all to you guys today. But one of the quotes that I shared with a friend today, because I, like you and some of the people in the chat, Anita, I don't give myself self-care. I'm really bad at it. I'm always focused and running so fast so that I can get all the needs of everybody else met. And one of the quotes in that book is, discover that your world doesn't implode without you going 100 miles an hour. And I love that, because sometimes you just have to wake up and sit there and do absolutely nothing and not feel guilty about it. You have to go home on the weekends and close your laptop and not think about work for the entire weekend, not answer a, can you unlock my Odyssey wear, or what is my graduation date? And just, you have to walk away from it and not feel guilty about work-life balance, and not feel guilty about being there with my husband because he's finally off and we get to spend time together, or whatever it is that we make ourselves feel guilty about. Because as much as I hate saying this, if you weren't to come into work the next day, the work still goes on. And that's something that has been really hard for me to understand, because as a perfectionist, I'm constantly putting too much of myself, too much time into it, and I'm not giving what I need at home. And so remembering to just slow down, take a breather, hit the gym, go on a walk, cuddle your dog, play in the garden, whatever it is that you need, and make yourself a priority.
And for us that have kids, or your young kids, old kids, remember they're watching us and they're going to act just like we are. So one of the things, I've really been working on, so once I'm done with work, I'm done with work. And unless it's an emergency, extreme emergency, I'm setting that boundary. I don't get back on my computer till the next morning. And I have a college son who's studying to be an educator. And so I'm hoping that I'm teaching him to set those boundaries and not, swallow himself that he burns himself out. So thank you guys for everything. I think we might have a minute or two. Miss Katie and I do love to talk. So we did tell Miss Amanda that she was going to tell us to zip it. Is there any questions or anything before we get a little break before our next session? Y'all don't talk at once.
Appreciate you two very much.
First to present.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. We really
in
appreciate you
person,
joining
like
us.